Let me ask you the question. What do people do to self-protect or self-enhance? Because remember, way back in the beginning of this lecture, remember that was like hours ago? Not so bad, but close to it. I pity you guys sometimes. William James said self-protection is one of our primary instincts, right? What do we do to self-protect, or even beyond that, enhance our self-esteem? Well, we have a toolkit that we can operate from, and for a while, researchers were arguing this is the way to enhance self-esteem. No, this is the way. And they were arguing with each other. And it was Abraham Tesser that came along and actually said, you know what? These all work. And they'll work to varying degrees depending on the context in which we're using them. So self-handicapping is providing oneself with an excuse for possible future failure. And remember, this is something that's done in advance, and that's an important distinction so we can differentiate it from the next one, self-serving cognitions. So if I got a massive midterm coming up tomorrow, and I don't think I'm going to necessarily do real well, maybe that's, you know, in the bottom of my heart of hearts, I'm like, oh boy, I could really biff this. Good choice for tonight then, if I want to engage in self-handicapping, is find a party, let me go out and get shit-faced, right? And not sleep, and I'll drag my nappy ass to the classroom in the morning, take that test. I'll fail the test, and when I get the test back, what can I tell myself? I can say, oh boy, I failed that test. And I'll say, but you know what? Who the hell could do well on that test with the hangover I had? So I haven't implicated my intelligence. At worst, I've implicated myself in making a bad decision about going drinking. And then I'm going to use self-serving cognitions and say, but isn't college about drinking anyway and having a good time? I mean, this academic stuff is overplayed. What it's really about is rocking on, right? So I spin the situation, or I might do poorly on the test, and I could say, well, no wonder. That teacher can't teach their way out of a paper bag. I don't see how I'm supposed to do well on a test if the teacher never explains it, or the teacher writes a horrible test. Notice now I'm using all these kind of reframing of the situation in a way that it protects my self-esteem. Another way to raise my self-esteem is to bask in the reflected glory, right? And that is I can connect myself to someone famous. And I've done this a couple times in the lecture. Notice I've attached myself to OSU Social Psych several times, which has a very high reputation. I talked about the Colloquium series and Torrey Higgins and meeting him, etc. I'm saying, look, you know, I must be pretty cool because I know these famous people, right? So I can bask in the reflected glory. I can point out my relationship, my association with someone who's famous. For example, I could tell you that Loretta Swit, Hot Lips Houlihan on the television show MASH, was my babysitter as a child. Just true. It's like my mom's best friend was Loretta. My mom's a casting director, and we met Loretta when she came out from New York. She left Broadway to make her way into Hollywood, and became friends with my mom and babysat me. So I know. So, whatever. Right? Yeah. Downward social comparison. We've already talked about. Compare yourself to someone who's worse off than you are, and you'll feel better. So there you go. I'm not going to belabor that. And then disidentify with the domain we've already discussed as well. Another popular technique. I'm not going to attach my self-esteem to my performance in this area. What do you think? So I no longer participate, or I no longer put any importance into it. Now, rewriting. If all of these things, right, have been written into your life story, guess what? You have the potential to rewrite certain aspects, at least, of your story. Now, I don't want to make that sound easier than it is. It can be hella difficult, but we do have the potential to at least rewrite some of our own story. And Bandura's self-efficacy is beliefs about our ability, right, to achieve desired goals, that is, demonstrate competency in certain domains of life. So the optimistic view is generated by mastery experiences, that is, taking on a challenge and mastering that challenge. And then that can bleed over to other aspects of our life. Well, I learned to do that, and I learned to do that successfully. I don't see why I can't learn to do this, right? And a lot of times this can be done incrementally. Notice when we talked the earlier assignment, when I was talking about incrementally shaping your behavior, you can master a relatively simple experience and then build on that, right? So maybe you go rock climbing. You say, oh, I want to, develop coordination and strength. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go rock climbing, and you go to a wall someplace, and then you take on a more difficult wall, right? And you work yourself up to go into Yosemite and heading on up El Capitan, or not, but you get the idea, right? Vicarious experiences. So you can watch others and learn from them and say, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. Right? And then persuasion and encouragement. Surround yourself who will encourage you, persuade you, right? People who bring out the best in you. And people who don't say, oh, no, you can't do that, or you should give up on. Those are probably the people that you don't want to hang with. So rewriting, look at section K on your assignment and tackle that. That's a long assignment, homework assignment, but you're worth it. So, building self-esteem, couple of things, couple pieces of advice. Recognize you control your self-image. Right? Give yourself permission to be okay with yourself. That is, you are probably the best at you than anyone else on the planet. Right? So, identify any self-handicapping, self-defeating behaviors, including sandbag. That is sometimes giving a mediocre performance so people don't come to expect high performance from you. Right? Modify negative self-talk. And, part of this is about Albert Ellis, because, the irrational belief system, a lot of times negative self-talk is the result of irrational beliefs about the self. So reframe failures as learning experiences or opportunities. I didn't do well on the test, but you know what? Now that I understand the test, I can probably do better on future tests. And I didn't study enough. That's pretty obvious. So I will make time to study more. That this is things that are within your control. Penelope, why are you scratching my leg? Okay. Set realistic goals. Emphasize your strength, but challenge yourself. Don't create goals that are so lofty that you doom yourself to failure. Again, a lot of that is about incrementing and being realistic. If you say you walk into the gym, I remember when I was doing the gym as an undergrad, I loved weightlifting, and it's like I see guys, bench pressing 250 pounds, and I'm like, boy, look at that. I'll take that shit on. Well, no, I can't walk into a gym on my first day and bench press 250. I can maybe start at 100 or 110, right? And then work it up in a couple weeks to 120, and then 150. And by the time it's all said and done, I think I was bench pressing, around 210, and that was good, and it felt good. But it's not something I did on the first day. It was progress over a period of years, right? 2 years. So, challenge yourself, but don't overdo it. Approach others with a positive outlook. Okay? Now, irrational thoughts undermine self-esteem, and this is kind of, irrational thoughts or irrational beliefs, if you will, in Ellis's context. There's just a bunch of examples for you to go through, right? Like, my body is a disaster. What is that, the fourth one down? And my body's a freaking disaster. This, being quarantined or being confined during this pandemic has made it a lot easier to eat and a lot easier to not exercise, One of the great things about teaching at Ohio State is you have to walk across campus to your next class, and sometimes classes are back to back, so you have to walk from Palmer into ARPS, in 15 minutes. You got to hustle, but you get good exercise, right? So, but let's look then, rational thoughts that lead to in the direction of enhancing self-esteem. So I can use my irrational thought, my body is a disaster, or I could say, look, my body isn't perfect, but but it's really not a disaster. I mean, and let me think instead about what can be changed, right, and better to do it. And my wife and I are both facing this, and there's an ellipse machine that's supposed to be delivered here today, right? So, and that's one way that will help ourselves, right? I'm different from other people. Well, that doesn't have to be a negative, right? Because I can no two people are exactly alike, and that's a good thing. How can I develop and take full advantage of my differences? How can my authenticity be something that I embrace? And there's a long list here, so just go on down the list, pick yours, and then think about the alternatives. And I really hope as we walk away from this class that that's what we do, is we learn to investigate alternatives. You can rewrite. You're not fixed in stone. And to the extent that you want to do this, then start finding ways to do it. And I hope that through this class we offer a tremendous number of tools that assist you in that quest, right? And I'm going to call it good. I know this was a long one, and I promise you the one on personality stands to be a tad longer. So you guys, if you want to suffer through or just read the slides, it's up to you. But let us say adios. Brain's kind of sleeping here, and or half sleeping, and we'll leave it with that. So adios, brain. Guys, thank you for your time. Take care.